we're back here again. We're all the way back here again. We've looped. History has looped.
So, leaving that aside, though, let's just take it for granted that that's
Anyway, why are they discussing evolution in a discussion about Israel Palestine? Oh, yeah, and this person's name is Ben Thorpe Aka Abel. What a wild ride.
what it was. However, exactly it happened. The science wouldn't necessarily dictate that social Darwinism was wrong. In fact, you could say, Darwin's nephew was a social Darwinist, and that the ideas of the National Socialist Party were largely founded on a kind of Darwinian survival of the fittest. From death comes life. Science doesn't tell you that the Nazis were wrong, and that secular liberalism is right. You see what I mean? It's even if you take it.
Here we go. In my biology study, one of my teachers said evolution is blind. There's no theology, no design. Yeah, of course. Of course, there's not. That's why I would actually say we should avoid even saying that X is beneficial, because it sort of implies that evolution has the goal of things being beneficial, but it doesn't.
If anything, I think Darwinism leads to violent clashes, because it seems to say the mechanism for the progress of evolution is competition and death. So for the National Socialists to say, like, so our branch of this needs to continue evolving by fighting against populations. You see what I'm saying? Like, science doesn't say that's wrong. Doesn't say anything about it.
Because science doesn't concern itself with what's good or wrong. I mean, you have the study of ethics, which does concern itself with what's good or wrong.
Science doesn't say it's right. Science doesn't make a moral statement. Your science and morality, like, I can believe in all the correct science, or we could all both believe in all the correct science and have completely different moral interpretations of it.
Right. It doesn't give you anything. But I mean, certain things, like, for example, the discovery of the conception of a sperm.
But I will say that, like, science does inform my morality. For example, science has shown that, like, homosexuality is not something that has only been demonstrated in human beings. It's been demonstrated in other mammals as well, of different variations. And showing that it's also in nature does give some inclination or some evidence towards the fact that, the gays aren't faking it for fun.
I mean, that's a flawed argument I never liked this argument. I never liked this argument of gay people are just born that way so that they cannot help it. I think it's a flawed argument, because you can just, on a moral quote unquote level, you can just counter it with saying, oh, okay, those people are just defective and therefore immoral. Even if they can't help it, they're just defective and therefore they are just born immoral. What now? You could say that, technically speaking. They're just born immoral. They're inherently immoral. So what now? I don't think it should matter. I think it should be perfectly fine even if it would be 1,000,000,000% choice, 1,000,000,000% just, I just find it fun. I just no, there are no animals that are gay. They're just humans that are gay, and they all chose it. It should be fine, in my opinion.
That's a tricky one, because I don't think
I just don't think that it's in nature and people can't help. I don't think it's a strong argument. That's it.
Nature generally.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, biologically, if you understand the reproductive system, homosexuality sort of doesn't make sense. Science.
Because once you get really into the whole people can't help it or something, like they are born like this, then you also have to understand that basically it leads to the logic of homosexuality is still bad, but it just cannot be helped, which means it continues into the other dangerous sort of logic, is that if there was an effective conversion therapy which would ungay a person, then it would be okay. Which, you know, I don't think should be a thing we should advocate for, probably, right?
Scientifically, right?
Does that make sense?
You're not going to reproduce if it's the reproductive system. Homosexuality and the idea of genetics that we've discovered seems to argue against the idea that it would be passed down, because you would have to say reproductively it would be a homosexual gene would be counterproductive, right? So it's complicated.
Well, I mean, there's other explanations outside of the gay gene. A lot of scientists propose that during the gestation period, while a mother is pregnant with a child, that the hormones that they're exposed to within the body could be something that affects the sexuality of the child when they come out.
Sure.
And one of the things that people point to is the fact that twins that are born by the same mother are more likely to both be homosexual.
When they come out of the closet, bam, bam, boom, bonk. When they come out.
Sexual.
Yeah.
If one is homosexual, they're likely to be both homosexual.
More likely than random. Yeah, sure. So you could have something like a genetic predisposition, but like I it's like saying rape. There's rape genes. So if you're raped, you should abort the child because that's a rape gene that's being passed on. I think we would say it's much more complicated. Human behavior, especially sexual behavior, aggression.
God, I hope I don't have the rape gene. That sounds terrible.
Well, it would probably, I would imagine, be affiliated with high testosterone, right? I mean, and also predilection.
Oh boy. Now look at the expression. Now observe the expression. Now observe. I told you about this.
Towards violence would be
okay. We're gonna rewind this because this was like a moment.
Correlated testosterone, right?
Terrible.
Well, it would probably, I would imagine, be affiliated with high testosterone, right? I mean, and also predilection towards violence would be.
The shock. I told you this was wild. I told you this would get off the rails.
Correlated somewhat with high testosterone. I think a lot of people in prison have a genetic or abnormality of an extra X chromosome, whatever that's called, which causes them to have higher testosterone, which would cause more aggression. So, yeah, there's something there, but I'm not sure that science endorses like the, secular homosexual agenda. It's a
secular homosexual agenda. Oh boy.
Stretch. Prima facie, science would, our understanding of the reproductive system would say, of course, this is a violation of the reproductive system.
A violation of the reproductive. You mean it doesn't reproduce people?
Reproductively, these acts are not reproductive, right?
Yeah.
And also, like in the pro-life movement, you could say the church didn't have a clear teaching as to when life began, but we have definitively scientifically proven that human life begins at conception. So the idea of the whole, like, it's a clump of cells, maybe it's just whatever. It's a human life at conception. No one can argue that anymore.
Putting aside the fact on whether even if it was a choice of homosexuality would be like immoral, I do.
True. Even if it was a choice, it would be perfectly fine. Perfectly fine. It's okay to be gay and have fun in the sun.
Think that if we can prove that it is not a
Butt plugs. Butt plugs.
choice, and that people are exposed to certain things even before their birth, or that they're unable to control, like by the time somebody, and even if it is something that is caused by their environment, I think it's probably a combination of both factors.
Agreed.
Like during that gestation period, and as well as like environmental factors that are completely out of the control of the person in question. I didn't control like whatever could have influenced any me to have certain feelings towards men or certain feelings towards women when I was 5 years old. I had no control, no idea. And so if we can agree on something like that, then that could inform somebody's morality on deciding how do we legislate these communities, how do we deal with
I mean, some people will just say they're born defective and should be ostracized. That would be some people's. Oh, thank you for the tier 1.
these communities. Are we accepting towards these communities, or are we not accepting towards these communities?
Yeah, but also you could say something like pedophilia.
Wait, what are you talking about? You speaking from experience, Lucy? Sounded a little confident there. Wait, what do you mean? What are you talking about? What are you talking about?
Also comes from those origins. It may be a combination of genetic and environmental factors, but we it's not clear. I think all those. I don't. Who would choose to be a pedophile, right? Who had normal sexual inclinations?
Mm-hmm.
I think this.
I cannot believe. Stop it, please.
Same used to be true of homosexuality, largely still is. There's a lot of downsides to it. So I would agree these things happen, but then the question is, should we as a society champion them? Or transgenderism is another big one. Should we champion these things and say this is like wonderful, normal, or even wonderful, or even better than, or should we say well,
I would say when it comes to pedophilia, the difference being, of course, is that
it causes harm to people. That's the difference. That's the only difference we need. It causes harm to children. That's it. You don't need anything else. You don't need anything else. Transgenders mentioned. Yes, I've been called out. Should I be celebrated? Should I be called? Should my lifestyle be, I don't know.
If somebody was to act upon those things, the damage to a young child is much more than between two consenting adults who both want to have a sexual interaction.
Also, by the way, because I still have not... Thank you for the tier 1. Because I have not sued my parents yet, okay? If I were to be with a girl now, that would be, in the light of the law, treated like a heterosexual thing. But once I sue my parents in court and change my documents, then in the eyes of the law, I will become lesbian, and vice versa. If I were to be with a man right now before the change of my documents, I would be gay. But the wonders of the law and of suing my parents and changing my documents would turn me straight. So that's how it works. A court order can turn you straight in Poland.
Because they're attracted to each other, right? I think the damage that is done to the child is a lot more, number one, it's more harmful to them psychologically, and a child cannot consent. Anybody under the age of 18, I mean, it's not like 18, of course, is not a magic number, but a 5, 7, 8-year-old cannot consent. And
right. But I don't
would
know
say
that that's
that
the only factor. I'm not sure that's the only, because people can
But-
What are the other factors then? I would say that is the only one that matters.
consent to all sorts of horrendous things.
putting aside the fact that, of course, that's a major difference that I want to make a distinction of, because I just want to show that these are two very different things, and there's a history of the equivocation of pedophilia and homosexuality in the United States.
A very big history, and not. I don't think it's just in the United States as well. Unfortunately.
And I just want to make sure that that equivocation is not made. I will say that when it comes to pedophiles, understanding what creates a pedophile, both from environmental and genetic factors, whatever it could be, I do think it's important to make sure that we are able to treat these people and to stop them from acting upon those things before they act upon those things, so they can get psychological help to both protect children and to stop and to bring down offending rates. So,
but see, now when you say that, if you say that in a right-wing space, they will say you're a pedo defender, and those people should have a bullet to their brain. And see, then they'll say you're a pedophile. See, that's
Oh, good thing that Dylan is not right wing then, I guess.
see, that's what happens when you get a hysteria. Now, of course, that's common sense. And that also, when they do go for that help, that you don't immediately put them on a list, because then they'll never go for that help, right? So there has to be this sort of liberalism about things like that, because...
Thank you. Space Stacy.
Right, and at the same time, if they act on it, because
said that are my Nazi friends.
I don't think there's anything morally wrong with having what I would say are clearly disordered, but whether they're gay, transgender, or pedophilic are
That's so bad faith. Whether or not they're gay, trans, or pedophile.
disordered, they're unnatural. None of them are necessarily someone's choice.
Let's not use the word unnatural, because these are things that naturally occur. We've seen homosexuality in other forms of like mammals. These are naturally occurring. When we say it's unnatural, it's almost like, you know, it didn't. If it's naturally occurring, it's.
I don't care for the term unnatural. Okay, cell phones are not natural. Streaming is not natural. I really don't care for this term.
Natural.
No,
I don't care for the term unnatural.
Well, okay, so now you get into a thing of when I was a kid, we had in nearby a zoo, and there were polar bears. And what animals do in confinement is often, although it's natural, like the male polar bear ate the kids that he had with the female polar bear. Okay. Is that natural? And that also can occur in nature. I mean, horrendous things.
I mean, yes. Animals eating their babies is a natural thing that happens. I'm sorry, just because you don't like it, it doesn't make it unnatural. Yeah, yes, actually. And ironically, yes. Like, what is this? Natural does not mean good. Natural just means it happens in nature. The word natural is not a synonym of the word good.
Can happen in nature that we wouldn't want to say, you know, of course, most animals, it looks like, rape each other, right? There's no whining and
duck rape is
duck.
I feel called out for some reason.
Duck rape is natural. I mean, it's horrible, but it is natural. It's naturally.
Yeah, I have a male.
Oh boy.
I have a male dog. He had, you know, high testosterone. Well, I think he had high testosterone. He would go to the dog park, and he was not interested.
That feels like a short material. But he's actually right about the ducks. Actually, unfortunately, he's correct about the duck thing. Dylan is actually correct about the duck thing.
Consent. That doesn't mean that I think that we should take his behavior in a dog park and say it's natural, and therefore rape is natural. You see, that's called the naturalistic fallacy. I believe that's called.
Okay, so how would you
make a shirt of this? Okay. Okay, down. It would be a very unmonetized one.
Call something natural and not natural.
So then we look at human nature, right, which is different than animal nature. And then you run into the problem, well, who determines what's natural? And you do run into this problem. But
here, that's the neat part. You don't.
We
generally in the West understand that,
because I was always of the idea that if it's natural, that means it's naturally occurring. Right? It occurs naturally. It is not like artificially introduced. Like we're going in there and making people gay and like turning them into homosexuals outside of like what is naturally occurring. Even though across multiple societies we do have evidence of like homosexuality historically across different species of mammal, we have different examples of homosexuality of different variations. Some of them monogamous, some of them not non-monogamous.
Yeah.
So I would say that to me has always been my definition of nature. Is it's
well, you run into
occurring.
A problem if the National Socialists would look at like, you know, a very strong, what is it called, pride of lions who would like push out.
I don't care about National Socialists, believe it or not.
Another pride of lions who would starve to death and say, well, that's natural. The stronger beat out the weaker, establish dominance, and expand.
That is
territory.
natural.
That is natural.
That doesn't mean it's good. You can say something is natural and bad if you want to. For example, I think like getting diseases is natural. Like these are naturally occurring diseases. Like these are natural diseases. They're still bad, and you should do your best to counter that.
Well, you have to run into a bigger problem here, which is like, where did bad things come from at all, right? Like, because we all would say there are things like diseases, pain, and suffering, and you run into a problem that whether you're religious or not, you're going to have a solution to, which is where did things go wrong and how is it that they went wrong? For Christians, we say that's, you know, the fall, original sin. Secular people will have to say something like the patriarchy. What I'd like to propose to you is that we all have a religion. If we take religion to mean an explanatory worldview. And while there are different versions of secularism, I think you probably represent a kind of mainstream Western secular, where it's at now.
Western degeneracy. You represent the
which is different than where it was
before.
Homo. I don't know. It sounds like you're not quite the most extreme. I think you would say, you know.
I'm not. I mean, I would consider myself a secular humanist, a globalist. I think that that secularism that has been built in the West is something that should be protected.
Yeah, and depending on what version of the West you're talking about, whether you're talking about, you know, Russia, is Russia part of the West?
No.
Is Eastern Europe part of the West?
That's a good question. Is Eastern Europe part of the West?
America, the definition
Am I a Westerner?
Like, I don't like the term the West. I use it because I don't like the term the West that much. The only reason I use it is because other people understand it. And I like to communicate with people the terminology they understand.
Good. I don't like the term the West either, to be quite honest.
Because the West is made up of conservatives, liberals. I don't know what you would say, the ruling elites, what their ideology that you hear on CNN. I don't know. There's just a mixture. It's hard to define that, but there is a kind of, I get it. A typical young person who finds them as liberal will usually have a certain set of values. And I would say that's effectively a religion. And religion has to answer three questions. Where did we come from? What should we do now to be happy? And where does this all go? I actually don't think secularism offers a good solution.
Where do we all go? I mean,
where does it all go? What is this all for? What's the purpose?
I think you'd probably would find your own purpose in life. I found my own purpose. I think everybody can find their own purpose. I think it's kind of like I don't know if you know, sandbox game. It's you kind of create your own purpose. You create your own meaning in the world. For a lot of people, that's an unsatisfactory answer because people kind of want like a secret door where it's like the purpose of life is to worship this God, or the purpose of life is to do this thing. And
something bigger than you.
I
yeah.
think that would that type of simplistic answer would be very nice. It'd be lovely if I had that type of answer for myself as well. If I could open a book and be like, "Oh my God, I've got everything figured out. I know what I'm doing with my life." There's a certain sense of security and comfort that it provides people.
Blah 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 blah. No, it doesn't actually. Religious people are also full of doubt. Like religious people keep doubting. But what if it's all BS? So even that comfort is sort of brittle. For 100 likes, thank you everybody. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
But I find the idea of, creating your own meeting pretty beautiful. I like that. I
think that's great as well. Like that you can sort of forge your own path in life as long as you live. To sort of give to the world what you can, which hopefully I will be able to do.
The idea of being able to.
But that's obviously a cope. You would love to know that.
No. That's okay. I'm gonna strongly oppose this bullshit. What is cope? Like forging your own purpose, forging your own destiny. That's actually having a spine, having, the courage to actually face the world as it is. What is cope is believing that there is this soothing magical force that guarantees that everything will be okay no matter what. That's the cope. There's no cope in actually accepting the world as it is and deciding that you will be the person that will choose the terms on which you will live in this world. That's the opposite of cope, actually.
But there is a meaning.
Well, it depends. What if I
you said yourself
maybe it'd be comforting if it was good, but if I found a meaning and the meaning of life was to exterminate this group of people, or if my meaning of life was to go out and struggle to death and create the greatest war. Like, what if I found out that meaning of life was just some awful, horrific, disgusting thing?
Also this.
Like everybody,
sure, yeah, you can get it wrong.
I mean, no. What if it's not getting?
What does that mean? You can get it wrong. That implies that there is an objectively correct way to get it. Hello, Bill Portley.
Wrong. What if it's the meaning of life is just a horrible, horrible thing?
Well, I mean,
for example, the Aztecs used to like sacrifice people and like chop off their heads or whatever the fuck and like cut out their. What if we all die and you find out like, nah, they were right the whole time. You should have sacrificed 20 children and you'd be going to heaven. Sorry.
It's true.
Yeah. I understand.
Should have, could have, would have. Bam.
Right, but that has like we have. That's a little. I think it was a little more complicated than that, but I think there was a death cult there, and
maybe the meaning of life is to do a death cult. Maybe that's the meaning of life.
There have been groups of people who have pursued religions that are demonic, and I would say a national.
Maybe demonic religions are you get the drill.
Socialists were, and at some points the Russian Soviet system was, and the Maoist system was as well.
Demonic?
Well, okay, I want to put it in secular terms. Destructive?
Satanic. Maybe destruction is the meaning of okay, I'll stop now.
I would say anti-theist. I could say that, like, I don't know if Nazi Germany would be anti-theist because the Nazi Germans worked with churches all the time. But the Soviets, you could say,
it's not really true.
They did work. They did work with. I said they worked with churches. They worked with the church,
though,
and they used
Hitler got birthday cake from the church.
Depends, because the neo-paganism, the problem with the neo-paganism is I feel like a lot of times it's over-exaggerated. There was, within the Nazi elite, there was a neo-paganism, but throughout the whole society, the church still ruled, it still dominated, and the conservative factions of the church aligned themselves with the National Socialist Party.
Some did.
Much of it.
I mean, the Vatican did, from what I know.
Did. I mean, once they took power, like for many of them, they were like, well, we already disagree with the socialists. We already disagree with the communists and the social democrats. I'm going to align ourselves with this guy because this guy is railing against some of the groups that we don't like and is promising to protect some version of like traditional values.
Right.
And during Hitler's rule, I mean, the church did see, of course, a lot of interference from the state, but the church was able to maintain itself and function until the end of the Reich.
Right. Now, I think the Catholic, this is controverted now, but the Catholic Church has a remarkable record of being on the right as far they have.
No, it does not.
Having the correct position vis-a-vis the National Socialists. Sure, they worked with them, but they were at the end of World War II. You know, the Pope was proclaimed one of the great champions of the Jewish people for all of the Jews who were saved from the concentration camps, and that the church, not every single Catholic, but largely, and of course Hitler was technically a Catholic. He was baptized Catholic, but I don't think obviously he was not a practicing Catholic. But it is true that So, but I'm just saying that all we have is competing worldviews. You would admit that, and that a religious worldview is competing with other worldviews. And I just think, for me, and I wasn't always religious, but religion. When you say it makes you comfortable, you can tell kids they're going to heaven.
So it's cope. That's definitionally cope. You can tell your kids stories that everything will be okay. You can cope.
That life is meaningful. I don't know why anyone wouldn't say that. Sounds terrific. Every hair on my head is numbered by my heavenly Father. He's merciful. He died on the cross for me. It's terrific. I don't know why anyone.
It's cope. You said that choosing your own purpose is cope, and then you've given the biggest description of cope that exists ever.
Says like, no, and I guess it's kind of cynicism or something. But everything that occurs to me, like me talking with you, I would say comes from the hand of God. For some reason, we're brought together to have this conversation on this night, and I don't know all the answers, but like, in other words, life is pregnant with meaning.
Life is pregnant. There you have it. You've heard it here first. Life is pregnant.
And it's personal. It's like your Father who loves you puts you in sometimes tricky positions. Don't you see? I mean, you must see the appeal. Why?
I understand the appeal of having somebody dictate to you.
True, I understand the appeal of being able to just cope about bad things, but that's just it. That's just cope.
The meaning you're supposed to get out of life. I mean, that's what it is. That not what the faith does?
No. Like, in other words, your guy happened to like connect with me and on this night, and you've had whatever you've had during this day, and I wait a half hour. Like, what does the Bible tell me something about that? No, it's just, life. I know that God is putting me in this situation for my good, for your good, and all of our goods, and even the people in Gaza. I think it's tremendously consoling to say the Lord is with us. And doesn't mean you shouldn't do anything or you should celebrate the experiences you're having, but it is tremendously consoling, and keeps you from anger, bitterness, loneliness, and alienation, which I think are the problems of your generation. Like the sense of meaninglessness. You could say I create my own meaning, but I mean that gets you only so far, I mean, and nobody.
I mean, it gets you far enough. It gets you far enough to live a fulfilled life, and that's fulfilling life. And I don't think you need any more than that. It gets you far enough. That's what I will say.
He really thinks that's meaning.
What do you mean by that? I mean, like, that only gets you so far. If
gets you far enough.
I dedicate myself to a cause, or I find meaning in my life through a documentation of history or whatever it might be. Why is that like not a for me? That's a satisfactory answer. I mean, for me, the reason I do the work I do is because I'm I'm willing to risk quite a lot because I believe in it. I believe in the mission that I have.
Sure. Sure. But I'm not saying that there's no meaning or you can't be an artist who makes beautiful art, but I'm just saying what kind of worldview do you put that in? Like
you put it in a worldview of not being a coward. There you go. I've answered. Once again, Lucy Haza has the answer. You put it
I mean, every atheist, let's say your grandmother dies, like, so what do I make of that? Like, is that just it? And that's going to be me too, and she gets buried in the ground?
Unfortunate, but yes. I mean, you have the memories of your grandmother. In a way, your grandmother is with you, depending on your relationship, of course. Part of your grandmother is now with you. For your memories, for the time you shared. You know?
And that's just it. And then if I have kids, I tell them, like, well, grandma's just in the dirt.
Grandma's gone, yeah. She's no more. But I can tell you kids about her. I can tell you about how she was. About our shared experiences, about our shared good times. And you can sort of know her through that, but that's basically it, yeah. You know? Does that make sense? I think it makes sense. It makes sense to me.
You have to understand
all good things come to an end.
Unsatisfying. Well, that's exactly the opposite of Christianity, right? All good things never end. And you have to understand at least that's
which is not cope at all. Oh no, all good things never come to an end. That's definitely not cope. Oh no. It's cope to choose your own purpose, but saying that good things never end, no, that's yeah. Okay.
Very appealing.
Yeah, it's very appealing. I think that's why people believe it.
Yeah, right.
Because it's appealing.
But isn't that the nature of life? That
it's ridiculous.
Like beautiful. I assume. I'm not.
I got a raid. Not so erudite. Thank you for the raid of 60. I appreciate it.
Not so erudite. It called me a white chicken. I still remember that.
Like let's say I assume you're heterosexual, but like whatever it is.
I actually wonder if Not So Erudite would raid me. I mean, the thing with Not So Erudite is very strange because I always say that I am the #1 presence on the orbiter. But I didn't really have a bad thing with Not So Erudite, so it just becomes a bit, you know what I mean? I feel like I don't know. I've made a good impression in that affirmative action panel.
I'm not.
Yes, he did.
I'm bisexual.
Okay, so well, let's just say for me, beautiful women are very attractive, and I want to have sex with them. Like, and you could say, well, yeah, sure, that sounds good, but like,
bisexual.
Yeah, what's the problem? If something's attractive, and you know what I mean? Like, why should life be? Why wouldn't you take the Kool-Aid, and I know you'll call it Kool-Aid, spaghetti.
Why wouldn't you take the D?
Monster daddy in the sky. Why wouldn't you take that? Because it actually makes sense, more sense than this other view. And it's extraordinarily comforting.
So it's cope.
And consoling.
I don't know if it I don't know if it really makes more sense to me. The idea that a bunch of, like, for example, like this could be said about any religion, the idea that like the comforts that come with it. And if when I talk to like Muslims or Christians, like if I talk to a Muslim, the idea that somebody who was like an illiterate like merchant, like was able to communicate with God in a cave and write all of his teachings down while also being illiterate, through an interpreter, through somebody who wrote for him, and was able to bring about the word of God. And then God said, spread the faith, and that it spread through the sword. I find it much more likely that this guy probably was lying and either espoused.
Okay, it's a bit more complicated than that. I already explained it a few hours ago with the Torah, that it was basically a set of instruction for a people how to function. That's it. Okay?
Was this tale to somebody else and they wrote it and this guy was just making it up, or was
it wasn't actually just made up. It was all those things were made for a specific purpose. It's just it wasn't a magical purpose, but it was made for a purpose. Usually political purpose.
Experiencing some sort of deliriousness. I mean, there are so many different people and throughout history who have claimed to be the prophet or have claimed to be the representation really of faith. If you go to China, there have been people who have claimed to be the reborn version of Jesus Christ, who have led entire rebellions that have almost brought down the entire Chinese system. And I think a lot of times it just comes down to which kind of theories just kind of pop off. Like, why are we not like worshiping that guy in China who said, actually, I'm Jesus, I'm the second coming of Jesus?
I'm Jessina.
Yeah, I think that if we talk about a specific religious nexus, but I would say Islam is like very similar to Christian. It's the same religion.
Yeah, it's Abrahamic faiths.
Offshoot, right? And as is Judaism. So if you want to say a different,
Judaism is not an offshoot of Christianity. I would say the opposite is true, but whatever.
Different religion. I think you have to go to Hinduism or Buddhism or something like that. And there is a commonality among all of them in that they're saying, for most of them, Buddhism's a little bit different, but they all have this commonality of saying like there was a sort of origin in which a sort of benevolent God created us and that we were going to meet him again. I mean, of course, that's been appealing. There's never any such thing as atheism until modern times. The earliest, archaeological remains are burials. No. Archaeologically, the earliest findings are burial findings, which means there's a belief in an afterlife. There were no atheists.
Well, there's not like atheist like religious ceremonies. There's no atheist like I'm gonna have my atheist funeral because
atheism is just a lack of belief.
Atheism at least is just like a non-belief in God, right? So somebody can like just not have any beliefs about religion and go about their day.
You can be an atheist and still have a religious funeral, because it doesn't matter.
Is not believing in God,
but I'm saying
there's not really traditions that come with not believing in God. There's not.
But you would have
like if I say I don't like music, there's not like a musical tradition that comes with not liking music.
But there are archaeological artifacts, right? Pottery and things like that don't in and of themselves indicate, because they are useful for carrying water. But there is always in every culture artifacts. You know, the pyramids, obviously, that's not a secular. People wouldn't spend that much time burying what they thought was like a king god if they didn't have a sense of an afterlife, right? But it was like this focus of their entire culture. You don't find atheism. That in and of itself isn't an argument that atheism is wrong. I'm just saying there's a tremendous...
That's also not an atheism that... That's also not an argument that atheism did not exist at all.
This religious desire in human nature, and there continues to be.
People want to find explanations for the world, and when you don't have like a scientific explanation for the world, or you don't have a way to figure out these things, then you're going to try to find a way to figure it out anyway. And that's where myths and mythology and religion and gods and Thor, etc. come from.
But science doesn't offer. It offers just different explanations. But no scientist has ever explained where the beginning ever came from. If it can't come from the material world,
there are hypotheses.
It's a huge problem for atheists. They just simply have no answer whatsoever for it. There's no scientific explanation of how existence came into existence. which seemed to occur at a certain point in time that we refer to as the Big Bang. And there are a whole number of problems.
Well, then it
right?
sounds like
How
you
does
just said that
truth
there is some explanation, or at least a basis for some explanation. But just because I don't have the answer for something doesn't mean I need to buy something that doesn't seem like a reasonable answer to something. For example,
we always choose the best explanation, right?
Yeah. I would say that. And when I read these religious texts, there's just
might not need it, but a lot of people want it.
So many stories in them that are just not things that I could ever find any familiarity with. Like when we're talking about like the burning bush or miracles that I have not seen and probably will not see for the rest of my life. Believing that just takes an immense amount of faith that I just
don't have.
You don't believe it takes
Hello, having no answer doesn't mean you get to invent one. True. True. Welcome to the stream.
Faith to believe that a bush talked to a person and they said, I am God on fire as a bush. Please go to the like. I feel that of course it takes faith.
Well, because you're reading it, you're not maybe sophisticated enough to understand that like ancient.
You're not sophisticated enough, Dylan. You're an unsophisticated brute, unlike me. I have a warm relation. Oh, never mind. That was mean of me. I apologize.
Ancient texts are different than modern text, right? It's
you know
like,
what?
My you read a poem and go, I don't believe that happened.
True. Your sophistication has been an issue. Oh boy. You know what? My sophistication has been an issue.
If I read a story and the poem says like a giant turtle like saved a village, I'm gonna be like, yeah, I don't believe that happened. That sounds like bullshit because giant turtles don't exist and they also want to save villages. Like I would like, and when you look at the Bible, it's full of stories like that.
But it's a poem. But you're saying a poem?
So you think that these
you like question the veracity of a poem?
Well, I believe. Do you not believe the Bible literally? You think it's like a book of just kind of like fairy tales?
No one believes the Bible literally in the sense that.
That's not
you're
true.
saying it.
That's not. There were
the
people,
Psalms of David, for example.
There are 100% people believe the Bible literally.
No,
because
I grew up with fundamental.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, as Christians, and you can always. There are certain things like the Psalms of David. They're poems.
Do you believe Noah's Ark was real? Like Noah's Ark. Like that he brought like two of every animal. No, I'm asking, do you believe it was real? Like that he brought two of every animal onto a big ass ship, and then a flood came that God sent, destroyed all of the earth, like genocide on genocide of the human race on a mass scale, like a start over button, and he was able to like keep everything.
I used to go to a Bible thing. That's my story for today, okay? Quite a few years ago, many years ago, I was browsing language books to learn some language. I think it was Vietnamese. And a Korean marriage approached me and sort of invited me to their home. They were German Koreans, and they wanted me to become a translator for their Bible meetings. I would translate to a person that didn't speak English from English to Polish. And their interpretation of the Bible was like straight out of a fantasy book. The flood, okay, so when the world was created, the entire planet was covered in a dome of water. And that dome of water, that water barrier, protected the world from all of the negative sunbeams. And that water barrier caused humans to live for thousands of years. Okay? Humans were super because the water barrier protected them from the beams of the sun. And when God got angry and did the flood, the gods did the flood sunbeams. And God was angry, so he flooded the earth with the water barrier. Okay? He flooded the world with the water barrier, which caused the evil sunbeams to reach the earth, which drastically reduced human lifespan. So yes, that was the interpretation of the Bible that I've heard at those meetings. It was an interpretation that I've never heard anywhere else before. It was very original, very imaginative. And the interesting thing is that the Polish person and the Korean person would often argue about their interpretations of the Bible. And when the person from Korea would drive me, I don't know, to the subway or something, he'd rant to me that person just doesn't understand. He's just using his own interpretation of what's being said. And I asked meekly, but aren't you also using an interpretation of the text? And the person would respond with, no, I don't do any interpretation. I just read it as it is. And I was like, oh my God. Shaking my head. I don't do any interpretation. I just read what's being said.
Groovy by bringing all these animals onto the boat, and they didn't eat each other, they didn't kill each other. They were able to figure out a way to make it all vibe.
And times, and there were some interesting things that came from that. Like, for example, they actually organized a huge conference for a famous Korean surgeon, believe it or not. They organized like this conference for a famous Korean surgeon who came in as a guest to speak on testicular cancer. So there were a lot of people invited. Cooks from the Vietnamese community were invited to prepare Vietnamese food for this conference. It was a huge event. And I was in this whole line of translators that were called in to sort of supervise this event. The surgeon was, of course, religious. So half of the conference was him giving a very educational speech about cancer, how you can actually do certain things to lessen the probability of getting testicular cancer, how certain things can be symptoms, etc. And then he started talking about religion and and there was like this weird contrast between these things. But half of it was actually one actual medical, whole presentation about cancer. Because he actually was a famous doctor, surgeon person. So that was pretty cool.
Then they let them loose, and then they repopulated the earth. Do you believe that?
It's really interesting that whole thing started with me just randomly meeting those people at this bookstore.
Literal level, I don't think that's possible.
But I was always taught religiously that happened, that did happen.
Right, that's fundamentalism, and there's fundamentalism in all religions, and what it tends to do is be unsophisticated in reading things. But the ancients didn't read Noah's Ark that way. The ancients didn't see 7-day creation. The ancient Christians saw those as very likely to be 7 epochs, which, to say they're 24 hours a day is literally impossible because you don't have a sun and a moon to keep time with until day 3 or 4. So I do think that we lack sophistication in understanding texts from the past, and we have a kind of what I would call a presentism, where we like tend to think that the way we think is like super smart and like the best, and that people in past times were like idiots, and we use these terms that actually the Israelis use to Palestinians today.
Actually, God did not get rid of Lilith. Lilith left Adam because he sucked in bed, and that's not a joke. That's actually that's an official story behind, like if we accept the existence of Lilith, then Adam sucked in bed, and Lilith was bored with Adam, and so Adam went to God crying and said, please give me a more submissive partner now. That's actually, I actually went to a lecture called The Demons in the Uncensored Bible by a nice Jewish presenter. And that was actually the story of the Uncensored Bible. And basically Lilith was like, you suck, bye. It was like, I need a more submissive partner.
I had a debate with Leah Lav-Loon where she called them barbarians, mud somethings, you know, and I think this idea.
Okay.
That ancient cultures who
I'm the submissive partner. True. I have deep empathy for the idea of being a submissive partner.
Think in ancient ways, who maybe don't have like sophisticated computers, are somehow subhuman. I think that could, yeah. So can a book from the past, while being an old book, while talking about goats and sheep, be something which is relevant to your life and my life?
I'm not
today?
saying it isn't relevant,
so.
but I think it's relevant as like the same way that like myths are relevant in the way that they can teach stories and lessons. Yeah. Like the story of like, you know, what's it called? Like not Little Red Riding Hood, but Little Red
Riding Hood.
Riding Hood, or the story of like the boy who cried wolf. Like all of these things have like a meaning to them that you can derive from them. But
Lucy Who Cried Wolf.
The way I was always raised was that Jesus did perform miracles, and that's how he proved he was the Son of God to his followers. If you believe that Jesus was just doing parlor tricks, or that it was not real, then how can you believe he was the Son of God? Then he was just claiming he was the Son of God, and that's it. And you just got to believe him for just believing him.
Right, of course, the resurrection had to have happened, or the whole religion, Paul says it himself, the whole religion is garbage. If Jesus Christ didn't rise from the dead. Okay, but that doesn't necessarily, that's a literal, like that's, you know, historically provable that Jesus Christ existed, largely provable, unlike Muhammad. But that doesn't mean that everything, that there was a literal snake talking in the garden. Obviously that would be a different genre, was recognized to be a different genre, and the lesson there was about
$60 to get in where. Also, if you want to donate $60, I won't be mad. If you want to donate some money to your favorite streamer, then I won't complain, okay?
Disobedience.
I mean, I think the existence of a person called Jesus has been pretty proven
to your creator, and it gives us the story of original sin. Now you could say, you could mock that, but I don't know that anyone's come up with a better explanation of like.
I will mock it. I will mock it relentlessly. That's right. Donate, please.
You know why the world isn't what
Muhammad was more real than Jesus. I'm sorry. Oh, okay. I mean, I don't have a problem believing that. I don't have a problem believing that a guy named Muhammad lived sincerely. You know, it doesn't change much for me.
What we'd like it to be, why we're dissatisfied. You know, so anyways, I don't want to take too much of your time. I can see you're tired.
You took a lot of time.
And I don't want to sort of
I want to take your time, said the guy. 1.5 hours later. You could have said that 15 minutes in. I don't want to take too much of your time, but once it's 1.5 hours in, that ship has sailed. You know?
Stay my welcome.
It's
but,
okay.
You know, it's something interesting to think
You
about.
already did.
Religion, I understand. I almost always people on the left I find if they have any experience of religion, it's kind of a fundamentalist religion, which is what I was raised in. And I rebelled against it. And I was an atheist for a while. And I don't think God, if you reject that God, I think you're actually in a good place.
Okay, can I ask?
Oh, no, this will go on for another half an hour. I don't want to overstay my welcome, says the dude that stays for 30 more minutes.
Can I ask you a follow-up, though? Let me ask you a follow-up. Okay, so the burning bush story, Noah's Ark, these are more, not, you shouldn't take these so literally. Why is it that we don't take those miracles literally, but we take Jesus's miracles literally? That it is a
I don't want to take too much of your time, but
seems a little too ridiculous to believe that 2 of every animal went onto a big.
But I will. Bam, got him. Blah. Also, please donate. I have ambitious plans, and to make my ambitious plans reality, I need monies.
Big ass boat and survived a global genocide, but Jesus was able to turn water into wine and fish and all. Like, these are, again, this would all be, if anybody else do it, it'd be like it would be magic. We would consider it magic. Why is it that we
consider it a miracle if you walk on water?
I mean, magic is miracle. Let me get into your hair. Excuse me? Are you what? Into my hair? What do you mean?
Well, I mean, it was you get what I'm saying. It's like a magical. It's like, oh, it's something we can't explain.
Defies nature.
It defies.
Chat's flirting with
nature. So why is it that the first tale, which would completely defy nature, that's just a tale. That's just them trying to teach a lesson. Jesus' stories is something that actually that happened. That's the one that is true in the Bible.
Well, that's where sophistication comes in, because there are, like you said, it's a collection of books. So the books are of different genres. It's not a history book with footnotes that was written like a history book would be written today. And so there are poems in the Bible, there are histories in the Bible. As you get closer to where these books were written, they weren't, I don't think maybe there are Christians who think that Adam and Eve were writing this down in the Garden of Eden on a piece of paper that was passed down. I don't think anyone's ever believed that. I mean, these stories coalesced in a few centuries.
They coalesced like jelly. I mean, Lucy is objectively attracted. Can we? No, that's not true. I'm not.
Before the Christian era. And so as it became closer to that, they were more historical books. I think that's true of human history. If you read the accounts of, the Caesar's conquests, there's probably a lot of ways in which they didn't write history like we would write it today. Right. Yep. It was probably written 40 or 50 years afterwards. It probably tended to emphasize the glories of Rome and not so much the
Failures.
the shit that went down, right?
True.
Okay, and like you said, human beings wrote it, and I think it's beautiful
that's
that God again
that's what
worked with
scares me,
people.
is because I feel like, how do we not know somebody did that about Jesus? That they wrote all these like great things about Jesus, but they're not including that time where he caught somebody like a loser, told him to kill himself. Right? They're not going to include that rant from Jesus.
There were actually accounts of the gospel that were much later than the original accounts, in which Jesus was this like sort of superhero, and the kids would tease him, and they'd like get like rocks cast down on them. So there were like those are called the Gnostic gospels.
Now that right there, I sympathize with that.
But those were
Dylan loves it when kids are. I'm not even gonna make a joke about this. I'm not even gonna go there. I'm not gonna make a joke. I'm gonna leave this alone.
seen as
I'm
later.
gonna leave alone Dylan enjoying the death of kids. Blah, blah, blah.
Like kind of there was like Greek culture but you can investigate. There are many historical facts, like in the reign of Tiberius in the town of Bethlehem. Like clearly the writers knew where they were, right? And then you run into this problem with the resurrection. If you say like, well, I don't know if that happened, well then clearly these people died who believed in it. So
By the way, Lucy, I forgot to answer you the other day. It was Kyle Klinsky that is covering a ceasefire and pieces in the. I doubt it. I'm sorry, DexMix. I'm sorry, DexMix. I just don't buy it.
how do you account for that? Oh, well, maybe it was a group delusion. Okay, well, tell me another group delusion that people die for. Then they say
there are many group delusions for two. There were many group delusions that people died for. That's you're walking yourself into a losing argument. There were many group delusions that people gave their life for.
witness this, right? They say, well, Elvis, people have seen
A cult is a group delusion that people can give their life for.
Elvis. Okay, who's dying because of, they saw an Elvis impersonator and made a leap, or someone who looked like Elvis? It's just, there are questions. What I'm saying is, it's not pure faith. I'm saying you can investigate these things, and critical, of course, there's been a critical apparatus applied to Christianity, and it's actually done remarkably well. Interestingly, Islam, which is much later, doesn't hold up that well.
I don't know if I would consider martyrdom proof of a religion's
proof
strength.
of something.
I mean, it's proof that people believed. I think it's proof that people believed, and they believed
genuinely
deeply.
believe.
Like, do you remember that one alien cult?
That changes nothing. You can genuinely believe in something that's nonsense. You can genuinely believe in something that's nonsense. Just because a child can genuinely believe in Santa Claus, it doesn't magically make Santa Claus real, right? Even if the child genuinely believes.
Cult that believed that the asteroid came close enough.
Heaven's Gate.
Yeah, Heaven's Gate.
Yep.
Like, those are people who truly believe. They all killed themselves for it. They wore the sneakers. They did the thing. Who knows how many of them believed, or how many of them were peer pressured to believe? But I'm sure if we look at history, that's probably going to be true as well, where there's a lot of social pressures to be as part of the village religion, and if you're not participating in the martyrdom.
I genuinely believe I can beat you in a debate. Wrong. You're wrong. You're wrong. You're wrong.
The Jim Jones Temple, people moved to South America, and they saw, at least some of them, engaged in mass suicide based on
who stayed alive to update the website. Oh god. Ouch, ouch, ouch.
apocalyptic kind of crazy guy. Yeah, that's true, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're all the same, right? I mean, that's just like, it's kind of easy to say, because there are other religions, there are no religions. Okay, all religions are stupid because there are many religions.
No,
or because the Palestinians have the Palestinians are violent, and the Israelis are violent. Well, therefore, it's all the same. I mean, we have to look at it carefully. And when you look at it carefully, I think it becomes clear that there is one side which is the aggressor and one side which is not. And, it's just as intellectuals, I think God gave us a mind so we could reason. And I think it's kind of.
Where do I even go with this?
Easy just to dismiss religion entirely as worthless and say that.
I mean, it has cultural value, it has historical value. Like, it's not totally worthless. It's just not true. It is value, I would say, but the value is different than what you'd like it to be. Does that make sense?
That what we've come up with as a pseudo-religion, which is kind of psychology blended with evolution and a kind of secular
psychology
worldview.
Is a
well, then why
religion.
are so many people crazy, lonely, alienated, and killing themselves?
I don't like completely throw religion away. I love idioms and I love tales and stories in order to teach lessons. In fact,
there you go. I just, it's not worthless. It has a purpose. It has a use, but it's just totally different than what you'd like it to be. And I'm fine with that.
In fact, in Ukraine, I have to use translators to interview people because I'm still learning the Ukrainian language. It's difficult because I'm learning both Ukrainian and Russian, and
it's easy. But I'm Polish, so Ukrainian is going to be easy for me.
But depending on which region you in, you flip up the language, and so you have to learn everything twice. But I use translators, and they'll often have trouble with me because I'll say things in idioms all the time, and they just don't translate well. And so I do believe that there's a usefulness in stories, a usefulness in stories in religion that can teach lessons. But if somebody is claiming that their religion is the explanation for the world, or their religion, is able to bring special meaning, I would have to look at it just along a sea of other religions, of other interpretations, of other pitches that have been made that this is the meaning of life, this is God's word, many of them copying off of each other and
copying is good. That means, it can be good. Like copying homework, it's a gamble. If you copy from a good student, then you're okay. But if you copy from a bad student, then you're screwed. Same with religions.
Off of the same stories. If you look at the stories of Jesus, it's not a lot of the story isn't.
Why did I make this weird comparison? Forget it. Forget it.
To be quite honest, new. I don't know if you've ever watched. I'm a big
Gay Jesus takes the wheel. Where do we end up? We end up having fun.
Cowboy movies.
The topic is Israel-Palestine.
Man, I love Clint Eastwood movies. One of my favorite movies of his is Fistful of Dollars. But I watched the movie that it was copied off of afterwards, the samurai movie that they stole everything from, and it literally ripped everything. And when you look at Jesus's tale, much of it was taken from other faiths and other stories beforehand. And that's true and that's not something I'm bullying Christianity over. That's true of most faiths that they steal and take.
If you say there are themes.
Adapt. Let's use the term adapt. Let's not use the term steal. That's a strong term, steal, okay? Let's just use the nice word adapt.
Of eternal life and things like that. That's true. Christianity actually, that's a sort of cheap internet thing where you say it's like Osiris and it was ripped. It doesn't hold up.
I have to check. I don't know.
Scholars have not agreed with that it's just an amalgamation. But interestingly,
it's just an amalgamation. But I mean, if you look at Jesus' story, it has a lot of parallels.
Yeah, there are virgin births and other right. Okay, yeah, that's true. But interestingly, Islam does look like an
Jimbo is a pretty well-known film.
Amalgamation of sort of half Judaism, half Christianity, and then some sort of stuff added.
I'm sorry, what?
And I do them half Christian does look births and other right. Okay, yeah, that's true. But interestingly, Islam does look like an amalgamation of sort of half Judaism, half Christianity, and then some sort of stuff added. And,
what? What does that mean?
And I do think as the scholarly apparatus attacks Islam, it sort of falls apart.
Scholarly apparatus.
That this idea that, because you have to say in Islam, unlike Christianity, God wrote in Arabic, right? God speaks Arabic. Like that's the mainstream understanding of where we got the Quran. Again, because the Prophet Muhammad was illiterate, right? So like his hand was guided, I think, by the angel Gabriel. That's harder to hold up with, even though that's a more recent religion. Like those texts, I think, come from the 800s, 900s. But it largely does sort of fall apart. So just because you say, well, Islam has this book and Christianity has this book and Judaism has this book, therefore all old books are stupid because some of them have things that are.
I didn't say they were all stupid. I'm just saying, like, if I
they're not factual. I mean, I'm not gonna explain the Torah again. I already explained it.
Walk into a conference and like everybody's saying, I have the thing that will make you tons of money at this investment conference, and everybody's giving you their pitch over and over and over. I'm not saying none of them have any good ideas. It's just like if there's 1,000 people telling you the same thing, that they all have the same solution to the problem that you have, like why should I value one over the other, especially if I can see them stealing each other's homework?
Please, what's my solution?
Okay, but secularism is another person trying to make that pitch. Why is it
not exactly?
This is, I think, the trick. Modern secularists say we're not doing what religions do. You are, and so the question would be: is it a better explanation? Is it more attractive?
I don't think secularists are necessarily doing that. Secularists a lot of time, and I will say
you're lying to yourself. It is.
I don't claim knowledge. I don't claim the knowledge.
This feels like not 2016. This feels more like 2009, to be quite honest.
Of like what, like the meaning of life, and like I can say that I create my own meaning, because if there is a meaning of life, I don't know it. If there is a meaning of life, I have yet to.
Getting back in time. I'm gonna take you back to the past.
Discover it, and so
but those are claims. Those are claims
that I don't know it. I can tell you I don't know the meaning of life. I know I don't know the meaning of life.
But that is a claim. That's a claim.
That's not a claim, you idiot.
But you say I create my own meaning, and that is the meaning of life. And that's a claim. And if it's attractive... No. He's saying there's no objective meaning, that you just find your own purpose. There's no objective meaning to life. You live your life the best way you can, and you just find your own meaning in it. There's for duck's sake. Come on. As an explanation, because we all want to have meaning, whether we admit it or not, right? You'll say like that's what people sort of like, that's what motivates people. If they have no meaning in their lives, they tend to get into drugs, alcohol, suicide, masturbation.
Well, then good thing that Dylan does have meaning in his life, isn't it?
You know, it just tends to be this kind of, okay, so you're making an appeal, make your own, right? And that's the great promise of the, what do you call it? Global homo. Yeah, right. You can create your own gender. You're free. You can create your own sex. You can be a man today, a woman like tomorrow. And I'm not trying to diss all that, but like at a certain point, you'd have to say, okay, but like, is this healthy? Because like, okay, so I'm going to make up in my mind what I'm going to be. You can see how it sort of seems meaningless to say, well, my adventure in life is going to be a woman when I was born or assigned the sex of man. And you get the criticism of people like Andrew Wilson saying like, no. There are some things that we, should take for granted. And within that, our, religious view informs us and guides us. And so like the idea of like everyone doing their own thing has kind of run its course. And, I'm just saying the trick, I think, is saying like, well, with science, I'm not selling anything. No, you're just another person in the marketplace of ideas. And I just think what you've been sold and what you're selling sort of sucks. I don't see the appeal of it, but I think the appeal is kind of like saying F you to life.
It's just
or to bad experiences you've had with other sales.
It just feels like a lot of times like people are walking back from their conclusion, where people want to see a good economic forecast, so they look for the good economic forecast and they're like, well, there we have it. So the economy is going to be good. My investments are fine. Don't worry about it. Where
yes,
I am much more willing to say, yeah, no, actually we might be headed into a recession. We might be going into a Great Depression. We might have no idea with the economic path that we're going to go down. And I wouldn't even call myself an atheist. I'm still culturally Christian. I when I was younger, I was more religious due to my mother's faith. But I would consider myself agnostic at the very least. I think this is something this is a recent development for me too. This is something I think I've fallen into while in Ukraine. I think the war has pushed me further into being agnostic.
Well, you could say, right, it's very valuable. People have made a lot of money by saying, I'm not economically going to ride the highs of everyone's buying, everyone's being ridiculously optimistic. I'm going to hold off because I think it's crashing and I'm going to buy low. That's
okay.
Very smart. But you'd have to say for people like you and I in the West, it's the more contrarian position is to say, actually, maybe
Dylan's not just trying to be contrarian. Have you first, guy?
Maybe the church had it right? It's kind of easy to go with the flow of atheism.
Go with the flow of what the.
But if you're actually looking at where atheism leads to, and what more traditional values lead to, it's hard not to see the appeal. And you could say, well, I don't want to be comforted. Okay, well, who doesn't want to be comforted? Who wouldn't love to tell their child, like when their dog dies, that that's all in God's plan, or when the kid has cancer, like God loves you very much. It's a tricky one, but like sometimes God sees fit to, put people through trials and, to give meaning. It's very appealing. Even people talk about Santa Claus. Santa Claus is appealing. I understand that the idea of the man in the chimney who comes down, right, for a lot of people, I think that's a form of child abuse, but Saint Nicholas was a saint.
I think for me, knowing that this is my life and my only life, and that passing, I don't know this for sure, but when passing, that there's a good chance I'm going to pass into the infinite, just nothingness. I think there's a certain beauty of knowing that this is my one shot, my one life, and I should make the best of it, and I should not live with reservations of, well, I need to live for the next life. I need to live for the life that comes after this, a life that I don't know what's going to come, and I've seen people around me live for the next life that might never come, if they find fulfillment while doing that, that's fine. I respect them in their faith. I respect people who can devote themselves to anything wholeheartedly. Period. But at the end of the day, I want to live for the life that I know that I have.
Your idea that we only have one life, that's actually also the Christian thing, and that like your reward or punishment depends on that. It's very similar. So I think that modern secularists, in some ways, they're like bad Christians. Like you retain a lot of the Christian heritage, which is why you're Western, but you've kind of lost the
which is why you're Western
need of it. And the idea of,
well, I find some value in the stories, right? Like most societies find, like I'm sure Greeks that know Greek myths find some value in hearing about who Thor plowed in the ancient times and had affairs with. But
wait, hold on.
Most of them will Thor plow. Like I'm sure Greeks that know Greek myths find some value in hearing about who Thor plowed.
Not Greeks. Thor is Scandinavian, no? Isn't Thor like the Valhalla, etc.? What do you mean Greeks and Thor? Ugh, Dylan. I'm disappointed in you. I'm so disappointed in this example, in this mistaken. I'm so disappointed in this uneducated example. You can be hyperbolic correctly, okay? Nordic. There you go. Nordic. Not Greek. You can be correctly. God. If you're gonna be hyperbolic correctly. Norse, yes. If you're gonna be talking about Greeks, you'd be talking about who, I don't know. Zeus plows. Yes.
Out in the ancient times and had affairs with, but most of them will not say that they believe that the thunder god exists, but there's still a value you can derive from it.
Right. Pure mythology. This is the Jordan Peterson thing. He more or less looks at the entire corpus of the Bible as moral stories, and they're incredibly valuable. The story of Cain and Abel is a tremendously valuable story about jealousy. Psychologically, it's never been beat. But, there are problems with interpretation, just like with anything. But there are also problems with the modern secular worldview, because, like I would say, talk to a National Socialist. If he believes in evolution, from the 40s, he's like scientifically, in a sense, more right than you are, because Darwinism is a natural sort of starting point that ends in National Socialism, and
I reject that completely. I just
it's interesting.
Reject that. I reject because
it's interesting to reject nonsense. Good, rejected.
Talk about it with you sometime, but I mean, it's interesting how that's true, because and I know it's tricky to say, well, then how did it happen? God made a giraffe and stuck it, right? I'm not saying that. I'm saying obviously things progressed in some way, but the idea that there wasn't an intelligent
designer, watchmaker,
what is it called? Intelligent designer is scientific.
We are literally back in 2009 right now.
We don't have a better alternative, and that's provable scientifically. And I love that, and maybe it will be.
I do not. I mean, I don't know.
I can send you a video about it. I'm not an evolutionary biologist, but
okay. I just
a large number of evolutionary biologists, the people who specialize in it, have recognized that
there's just so many problems with the human body that it's hard for me to imagine that it was. Like that was made by intelligent designer, and it kind of there's flaws that we find. There's diseases that we're more susceptible to than other species that end up killing us at much higher rates. That an intelligent designer could have introduced a DLC update for if he really wanted to protect us from those diseases. And
I love having a body. I love looking at other bodies, and I think they're a great gift. I love my body. I used to not. But I love.
I'm happy with my body, but if I'm being told that there's an intelligent designer, I feel like there's some updates and changes that could have been made to make human beings more, make human beings healthier, make them more susceptible to damage. Yeah,
I mean this would come from this. Then you would get
Yes, I was about to correct. Less susceptible. I don't want to be more susceptible to damage.
Original sin would come in with this, like that. Obviously in the Garden of Eden. We didn't have a lot of these problems. That, in a sense, like HIV is in some sense was not part of the original plan, so that's accounted for.
See, but that gets me, because it's like, oh, there's an intelligent designer. Okay, but what about these flaws? Oh, the intelligent designer decided that you're gonna have those flaws as punishment.
Calm down, chat.
And it's like, okay, well. So the flaws in the intelligent designer system is explained by the designer deciding that he was not going to completely design the human intelligently or purposefully design them in a way that's going to be susceptible to problems.
Right. Okay, and I understand you could say that I mock that idea. But what is the secular explanation for why, like, we hate cancer? Why do we say, I hate cancer? I hate it when a kid gets cancer. Why? Why do we feel like that's wrong? And it's like something
because we have deep human attachments to each other, and we know that we would not like to get cancer, and we are more than social beings that would like for our children to live, to be happy, healthy people, and we are very social. We're very social animals.
But we have a sense that there's something wrong. Like in Ukraine, there's something wrong here. But from a secular perspective, like there's a failure, that human beings are failing in some way, right? That they're killing each other. From a secular perspective, why would that be wrong? Why would that be any different than
2009 debates about religion?
Just like animals fighting in the
Depends on your
jungle?
moral interpretation, and my morality would say that the violation of Ukraine's sovereignty, the death pits, the targeting of aid workers, all these things I would say are wrong. I'd say they're wrong because they don't benefit people, they only hurt people, and they violate the rights that I would like for to be respected across the board of all human beings.
Right, but what I'm saying is those are mid-level things, and I agree with all of that stuff. I think that's also a Catholic position. But like the question,
Catholic position.
Down,
That's not a Catholic position.
I think that the Catholic position would be very similar to what you just articulated.
Gotcha,
the Catholic position on international law and things like that. But what I'm saying is this just a fundamental sense that there are problems in society, and that life itself, because of death, is sort of a problem. And that we're not okay with. We all wrestle with death. It indicates a religious. Now you can say, well, that was evolutionarily, right? But it kind of is hard to explain. Why do people create beautiful art? And you can try to do it with utility, but like, why do you know what I mean?
Art is beautiful.
Why is there a delight? This is a question I have. I take kids, my kids to the zoo when they were younger. Why does this species delight in the other species? Why would that be? That you just think giraffes are hilarious and crazy, elephants are so, I mean, to me their response is the response of a child to the creations of his father that are remarkable and funny and beautiful. And that's what I think religion gives you that science can't give you, which is a joy and a gratitude at existence, because we know it's sort of like a gift. And I don't know where secular people can say, they'll sometimes say, I'm grateful for every day. It's such a gift. But who are they? Who gave him the gift? No one?
Oh boy, it's a figure of speech.
Nobody has to give me a gift or give me something for me to appreciate it.
True.
As a gift, yes.
Why?
If you're saying
I think I can appreciate something without it being
It's
a
a
gift from a
figure-
higher creator.
It's a figure of speech. You dumb.
But if you say I'm thankful, which a lot of atheist people will say, like, they're inadvertently recognizing that they haven't quite kicked the habit. And maybe you're saying I'm not trying. I'm not anti.
That's stupid. I'm sorry. What? No. It just means it's a figure of speech. I'm happy to be alive or whatever. Like, come on.
Atheist. But like there's something about life that's like the response should be one of joy and gratitude and not cynicism and hostility.
I think I'm thankful towards the people who have helped me get to where I'm at. I'm thankful towards my grandparents. I'm thankful towards just fate for allowing me to live where other of my friends have died in places where I could have died. I mean, but I at no point does any of that thanks end up at the feet of a deity.
But maybe it could. I don't see what the problem.
I mean, it could if I believed in a deity.
It could, if it would, if it should, if it, I don't know, but it doesn't. So that's meaningless.
If you say fate and providence, right? Fate is also like quasi-deist. Like you're saying, like somehow everything works out a certain way. I mean, that's on its way to being a religious point of view. That's not random chance, right? You're saying somehow these people were put in my life in a way that I'm grateful for. It kind of seems like, well, you could be. It could be. I'm not saying. I'm not here to say, Dylan, convert or you're going to hell. I don't think that's true. We're all on a journey.
You don't think I'm going to hell? Wrong. If I don't accept the Christian faith, I don't go to hell?
Christians have said this. Jesus Christ specifically commands that we never judge anyone. I don't understand why Christians tell other people they're going to hell. It's absolutely not true. And they do that so that you don't
I'm not going to hell. If I
have no idea what your response to
you are
existence
going
is.
To hell.
I would say there's a chance that all of us could do a bad job with the gifts we're given, with the lights we're given, and say no to existence. But I think the idea of you being in my church or this church is bullshit. And Pope Francis would say the same thing. If you said to him, look, Pope Francis, I know you think I'm going to hell because I'm not a Catholic or I'm not a Christian. He would say, absolutely not. No way. And that's not a cope. And that's not like covering something up. And anyone who would tell you otherwise does not deserve the name of Christian, because that's actually what Jesus says. Most importantly, we don't do is condemn people to hell. So I think we should have more conversations with people of faith and not of faith. But like, I hate it when people do that. They do it to me. They do it to me, and I'm a Catholic.
Israel-Palestine conversation, by the way.
And other Catholics say, you know, you're going to hell. I know you're going to hell because you missed church. And I'm saying, like, don't you? You're condemning yourself to hell by saying that. But it's interesting. I really want you to tell all people who are non-committed believers that Christianity does not. And if you press Protestants, most Protestants, and all Orthodox and all Catholic, which is the vast majority, ask people in Ukraine whether they think if you're not a Christian, you're going to hell. They will say no. The priests will say no, no, we don't know. But it's great if you're on board.
I feel like I've been duped.
Because then you have the sacraments and all this stuff, but we do not know. It's right in the Catechism of the Catholic Church. God fear, whatever. Earnest seekers, God welcomes. I mean, you end up with this thing. So the Native Americans before Christianity arrived, they're all in hell. And you will find Christians who say, absolutely.
Oh, boy.
It's ridiculous.
It's almost over.
It's a ridiculous position. But that's why people reject Christianity, because that's ridiculous. That's clearly ridiculous. Any God who would condemn the Native Americans because they didn't happen to be born in a place where they could even possibly be preached the gospel, that's a foolish religion. And, you know, it is not mainstream Christianity.
It was good talking to you, man. We've been going for over 2 hours now. I think it's probably time to wrap it up. Yeah, no worries, man. You have a good one.
Thanks for being so polite. A lot of people, they go off on this, like, did you do this? Did you do that? It's like I appreciate you just saying, like, well, I don't know. What am I going to say?
I don't know, man. I mean, people are saying stuff, but I don't know. I don't.
Yeah, I mean, there's a kind of like, in some spheres on the internet, there is this drama thing, like, let me get someone on something how would I defend myself? People think I raped my daughter. She says he has been nothing but a gentleman my whole life. I say no. And then they come up with theories like, Stockholm syndrome. I don't know what to say at a certain point. So I appreciate you having
where did all of this originate from? Where did all of this stuff with you? It's just like this rumor mill. It just started randomly saying that you have an inappropriate relationship with your daughter.
Like have your mother on stream with you and have a warm relationship with her. Nothing untoward at all. And you will see people will start doing it.
Well, like I'm like a warm relationship. I mean, I like
warm relationship.
I don't know how. I don't know if my grandmother went on screen and said hello and I said hi grandma and I kissed her on the cheek. I doubt anybody would take away from that as Dylan's like doing stuff with his grandma. Like
What was that really bad laugh? That was not a good laugh. That laugh made me feel uncomfortable. That laugh made me feel not good. Adam Bourne Bennett. No. His faith has been shaken.
Yeah, I don't.
Also, welcome to the team, Adam Bourne Bennett.
Maybe not, but maybe. I'm sure some people would. I mean, I don't know how.
What the fuck?
Your chat is, but like chats tend to be like, if I'm talking with a black person, they'll say racist stuff, and I think they're mostly kidding around. If I'm talking with a Jewish person, they'll say anti-Semitic stuff. I think they're mostly kidding around. I don't tend to like super police because I think, it sorts itself out. But there is a problem with, I think probably for me, like I come across as fairly masculine, I think, although a lot of people say no way, you're the biggest wuss I've ever seen. And I think a lot of people have sort of issue. When I used to teach high school, there were certain kids I would stand in front of and they would hate me because I reminded them of their father. You see what I'm saying? And they would cause problems. I was like, where does this come from? And then the principal would say, him and his dad don't get along and you look like, what I mean? So I think that's what happens. And, but that stuff you tend to get vetted and then you get through it. Either you grow thick skin or you, I'm sure you've been called an agent, right? Have you never been accused of being like an agent for? I don't know where you stand on the Ukraine thing, but like,
oh yeah, I've been accused of being like. Some people believe I'm the grandson of the CIA director because my name is Dylan Burns and the CIA director's name is William Burns. I get accused of stuff like that as well.
Oh, it's
just such a like a left field thing to just see in chat. Like this guy, like does this with his daughter. It's just very left out of left field.
True.
Yeah. Do I have a warm relationship with my daughter? Yes. Do some people find
what can you define warm relationship for me? Like it's just like you
True, define like what the hell does that is
or you love your daughter.
I might say hi sweetheart, like, hi sweetheart.
Okay.
And other times I'll be a little bit like, you know, she's been through a lot. So I mean that I think probably comes from, we've had a lot of trauma. So sometimes I'll be consoling with her, sometimes I'll sort of push her. And I have an exercise personality, so you know this idea that any woman in the presence of a man who may be correcting her or you know angry towards her is being abused is a huge theme on the internet. And I do understand that if you see a big man talking with a smaller female, if you walk in on that, it can look like abuse. But I just think that's not necessarily the case. So. You know, it's drama. It got a lot of views. I'm happy to be talking about more substantive things than like whether or not I abuse my daughter because, you know, there's only so many times you could say no before you're like, all right.
Okay, man. Well, you have a good one, okay?
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
That's it.
Was an interesting conversation.
Interesting conversation, huh? So, if you've enjoyed this, press like, subscribe, hit the bell. You know what to do. That was our analysis. That took us 5 hours. That took us 5 hours. So that's another 2-parter, I guess, or something. That's, yeah. That's something.